Hi, I'm Zach with Josh's Frogs, and I'm here with Mike Clarkson of Herpetological Conservation International. We're doing an interview for what we're doing for this project for Josh's Frogs this year for Giving Tuesday. We're actually pre-recording this on a Wednesday, and for a really good reason. So turn it over to Mike. Why don't you tell me why we're pre-recording this, and then also what HCI is about.
Hey, Zach, thanks. It's great to talk to you again. Yeah, I wish we could do this live on Giving Tuesday, but I've got a really good feeling I will not have internet then. I'm headed to the Maldives, followed by South Africa, to do some film work for a network I do a lot of work for. And that would be, well, I'm not supposed to say, but let's just say it's one of the more science skewing networks, and happy to be doing some shark stuff with them again. So I'm not available then, but here we are now, and we'll just pre-record this, which is perfect because we can edit, right?
Right. That is a great reason for recording something, I would say, being so remote, internet's not going to be a possibility. So why don't you tell us a little bit about just yourself and HCI and what you're about before we dive into the details of this Giving Tuesday project?
Yeah, for sure. So I am by trade a film producer, actually vice president of a production company, and I specialize in wildlife TV, although I do all sorts of TV. And it was actually on a National Geographic shoot that friends of mine, we talked, we want to do something for conservation, we want to do something in that space, but we never really had that moment where like, let's do it. And I'm taking it way back to the origin because that kind of helps bring us to what we are now and today. And so we were filming lions in South Africa. And on the back end, we had some time allotted for what they call B-roll, excess footage that you just intersperse in. We had gotten so much, we didn't really need the time. So we said, hey, what would be fun is to find some Brady-Podium chameleons. And you see right there, Brady-Podium chameleons in our logo, and there's a reason for that. We went to some of the very famous ranges, some of the, Nottingham Road and the spots that Brady-Podium people are well familiar with to look for these things. And while driving there, a lot of the fields were on fire. And it just kind of sparked a realization that there isn't much being done for these small animals with small ranges. Most of the reserves, Kruger, Shishlewium Flosi, Otto, they're all built around your charismatic megafauna. And some of your smaller reptile amphibian species that, I really love, and all of you out there really love, can easily get overlooked because it's hard to say, hey, let's conserve this one animal in this one spot. This micro endemic. So we got together, formed a board, and then said, let's do this for real. Let's do a grassroots conservation organization that not only is 100% the money goes to the causes. No one's taking a salary. This is all everyone's second thing, because we don't want to have donations getting leached out by the organization itself, which big organizations do that, and there's no shame in that. But for us personally, we said we want this to be a way to give back and a way to empower the herp community to be a part of conservation, because conservation for a while had been not a bad word in herpetoculture, but something people were hesitant about. A lot of the big names weren't always pro keeper, and we were all and are all reptile keepers. I myself have some dart frogs. I love aquatic snakes. It's actually what got me to where I am today in wanting to do conservation, right? It was that spark that lit a fire. It was that first pet lizard where you start getting into lizards, you start reading papers, and then you graduate to snakes, and now you're reading, stuff on that, and suddenly like, these are amazing animals. And then hits the field side. And I grew up in the desert, so I'd always been a field herper as well. And then you start seeing the habitat disappear. You fly over places that were once jungle. You see places in books or even TV shows that occurred 20 years ago that don't exist anymore. And so for all of us, herpetoculture was kind of a gateway drug into conservation. In some sense, it's an anomaly to have a conservation organization that is embracing herpetoculture, but I don't think we're the only ones either. It's just something we feel very strongly about, that those who love reptiles, those who keep reptiles obviously love them. So for us, a really big and important factor is that those that love reptiles, that keep them at home, maybe they're field herpers, maybe they're casual keepers, or even academics, have an organization that's grassroots for us, by us, to give back to conservation, to give back to reptile amphibians in the wild, through my work travels.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think a lot of people have feelings, the pet trade, keeping a reptile, keeping an amphibian is a great way. A lot of times the first way a lot of people really get exposed to or connect with nature. And I think there has to be that connection if you're going to start caring about it, and you have to care about it if you're going to conserve it. So I think really that goes hand in hand. And I'm just really excited for, as the pet trade grows, as we move forward, I think we're going to just see more and more and more of those opportunities for, the keeping of animals as a pet or as a breeder, either way, directly paired with a conservation, maybe of that animal species, maybe of that genera or that family, in the wild. Just really exciting times.
Absolutely. We have a grant program, the Michael D grant, which we're actually taking applications for right now, named in honor of the late Michael D, who was one of our founding board members, former curator of the Los Angeles Zoo, and anyone on the West Coast knows him as, the book vendor at all the reptile shows. Nicest guy. We realized we were all younger. We needed, some sage wisdom, and he did a lot with rhino and tapir conservation, and he helped us get started. But the reason I bring up the Mike D grant is because we always do kind of a biopic on the winners each year. And the number one reason people got into studying reptiles and amphibians, now this is a small census amount, it's just our grant winners, but the number one reason is always a pet, right? I had a bearded dragon, or when I was a kid, there was an iguana I had as a pet. And it's funny to see that and realize, yeah, it's not a limited phenomenon. A lot of the next generations of researchers and conservationists started because of their pet. And that's part of what makes the pet trade important, is because it does help curate the next generation, as long as it's done ethically, which is why HCI is really excited to be partnering with Josh's Frogs on a project like this, because you guys have led the way, captive bred, quality. You're not just buying from anyone and not knowing the source. You guys are really behind what we feel very strongly about. That pet keeping can be ethical, it can be conservation friendly, and it can be conservation beneficial if done the correct way. So I just want to once again thank you guys for what you're doing out there, because that's very important, and it's the kind of example we need.
That's awesome. Really appreciate it, and really excited to let's say thank you for working with us. I know coming up this Giving Tuesday, anyone shopping on Josh's Frogs, at your checkout, there'll be a link available to make a donation to Herpetological Conservation International to support a really, really special project that should be near and dear to any amphibian keeper's heart. Could you fill us in on what that is?
Absolutely. This project's one that I've been very excited about for a while now. And it's one that on the face value, you're like, okay. And then you realize, why hasn't that been done? So if you go to research stations, a lot of government preserves in Central South America, places with chytrid, you get these signs that say, hey, disinfect your gear, disinfect your boots, because as you and I know, and I'm sure many of our viewers do, there is an amphibian pandemic happening. We just are in the midst, maybe hopefully the tail end of our own pandemic, but amphibians have been going through a pandemic much longer. And theirs isn't a matter of quarantining. They're restricted to the wild. It's us protecting them because we're the vectors for their disease. Now, with chytrid, you don't wear a mask. You have to make sure that what you bring to the environment is disinfected. And this whole project kind of was sparked from a trip in Colombia a few years back, where I was in Leticia, which is the Amazon region of Colombia, and seeing dart frogs there, and then headed to the Choco. And the first thing we saw was Atelopus. And anyone who's field herper knows that's not an easy find. But here, they were everywhere. If you walked around at night, Atelopus, Atelopus, Atelopus. Atelopus are very, very, very prone to chytrid. When you have an area with that many Atelopus, chances are chytrid hasn't hit there, which is becoming rare. Oftentimes, we'll wipe everything out and things will come back. But here, with all the Atelopus, seems unlikely that there was chytrid. So the first question I had to the lodge owners, a small family sitting on 500 pristine acres, was, do you have spare boots? Because I'm out of disinfectant and my boots were in the Amazon and I'm not taking them out of this plastic bag for any reason, but I need something hiking because I'm not about to do it barefoot. And they said, no. So I asked them what disinfectants they had, and they did have applicable disinfectants. And they were wondering why I was doing this. And I said, well, these amphibians that you love, and they also had harlequin dart frogs, really great diversity there, are in danger from me, because if I just hike around your property, I could have picked up chytrid in the Amazon and drop it off here, especially when you're in the tropics and your stuff isn't drying out. And this is how chytrid is transported. They'd never heard of it. They didn't even know what it was. And suddenly it dawned on me that other tours go through this exact path I take. A lot of them hit the Amazon, then they hit the chocolate, they hit here, and then they hit here. And field herpers and tourists and birders are often the thing that's spreading this deadly pathogen to sensitive amphibian populations. But I don't think most would if they knew any different. They just don't know. So it's a matter of a huge problem that's fixed by just a little information, which is when HCI got together and discussed the idea of doing an informative poster free of charge, translated in multiple languages for private reserves and eco-lodges, accompanied by a web page that gives you all the information you'll need as a casual traveler, broken down really easily in terms people can understand. And then in areas without Wi-Fi access, we're also adding on a brochure that has the information people will need to take away to protect those areas from introducing chytrid by tourists and nature lovers incidentally. You know, I don't blame anyone for doing it on accident when they don't know. And I think that's often the case. You know, you look at the golden toad in Costa Rica, the researchers who were studying it, who loved it, who discovered it, are probably blamed for it being extinct right now because they didn't realize the vectors they were bringing. And it's a tragic story, but it's a tragic story we're just going to keep repeating if we don't do something different. And that difference is getting the word out, getting people to understand, yes, it's great to go explore and see wildlife, but there's just a couple very simple precautions you can take to keep from destroying it when you leave. The souvenir you don't want is extincting a species. That is not a good travel memory. And it's preventable by just a little information that we'd like to put out there for people free of charge to help inform the public, tourists, travelers, and lodges about real simple ways to mitigate that risk.
That's awesome. And it seems like a great idea. It must be so much easier to help, invest in preventing a problem than trying to solve it after it's already there and already impacted so many species, especially these amphibians we love. So yeah, basically, it's Giving Tuesday. You have a chance when you're checking out on Josh's Frogs to just submit a donation right to HCI, and we'll help get this done. I'll be making sure I check out on a website for something so I can throw some money in there to help you guys along. I think it's just really important. Accompanying this, we will be releasing a blog just going over some of the basics of how you can help prevent the spread of chytrid, both in captivity among captive animals, your pets, how to monitor, as well as some of the steps you can take in the wild if you're out there enjoying interacting with nature, just to make sure you're not unintentionally being part of the problem and doing a lot of harm. And just keep in mind, it's testing for chytrid is pretty straightforward using a basic PCR test. And chytrid can actually be treated pretty easily if it's identified correctly in amphibians too. So this is definitely a problem, at least in captivity. We can get ahead of as long as it's identified, and in the wild, just taking those steps to protect those wild animals, which is a great big first step to help prevent it. In some spaces, it's not. So anyway, Mike, summing up, anything else you'd like to add? How can people find out more about HCI, or if it's maybe they're seeing this and it's past Giving Tuesday, or maybe we release this before Giving Tuesday, they want to jump the gun and send you guys some funds, how would they do so?
Well, we are on Facebook, Herp Conservation International, Herpetological Conservation International on Facebook. You can also go to herpconservation.com or herpconservation.org. They both go to the same site, and there's more information there. Also, if you yourself have been to a reserve or a private lodge or whatever it may be that didn't have information on chytrid available to the visitors, shoot us an email. We have a contact form, or hit us up on Facebook or Instagram. We'd love to add anyone to that list of places to receive this information. And all we ask from the place is that they display it. It's really simple, free of charge to the location. If you've been somewhere that you enjoyed and you want to make sure when you go back, there's not a loss of amphibian life, this is a great way to do that and help amphibians everywhere. Atelopus, that genus, is doing so bad, but they're not alone. A lot of frogs are disappearing. We're in the middle of a very real problem. In captivity, it's treatable. If you take the proper steps, you test, you treat, and we should be doing that. In the wild, it's more complicated. And the best thing we can do is prevent it. And that's what we're trying to do. Just a little bit of education for a little more prevention.
So, thanks a lot, Mike. That was great. I think a lot of good information for our customers, and just also, a great way to allow our audience to help get ahead of this and be part of the solution, or at least prevent being part of the problem. Remember, hop on over to Josh's Frogs, all captive-bred amphibians. We test and ensure our animals are chytrid free, so we're not passing around, and we're just really, really excited and grateful to be able to partner with HCI on this Giving Tuesday to help prevent the spread of chytrid in the wild. So thanks a lot, viewers. Have a great rest of your week.